Welcome to our pop culture pastors hour for today, the March 16th. We are doing the first of our two-parter on Project Hail Mary. So today is more about the book. 2 weeks from today will be more about the movie. By the way, my name is Edward Goode, and I write at Imago Scriptura here on Substack, and my
And
compatriot here.
yes, it's MaryAnn McKibben Dana, and I write at the Blue Room here on Substack. And I cannot believe that Project Hail Mary week is here at last. We have been waiting for so long, making our little Lego designs, rereading the book, buying our tickets. When are you seeing the movie, Ed? And who are you seeing it with? And where are you seeing it?
We are seeing it. We have tickets for it twice. We are seeing it locally in an IMAX theater here in Cincinnati on Thursday night. And then some of my family, not everybody wanted to do it, some of my family are going the next day to Indianapolis, which is only about an hour and a half away, to see it in 70 millimeter IMAX. So,
Fantastic.
there is much geeky excitement happening in our house.
How many of them have read the book?
All of us have.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So all of us read it. All of us loved it. Yeah. So what about you?
Wonderful. I am also seeing it Thursday evening. I am seeing it at the Air and Space Museum, Smithsonian Udvar-Hazy Annex, which is out not far from where we live, in IMAX. True IMAX, not LIMAX, as my husband is very careful to make the distinction between like random theaters that have a big theater, a big IMAX screen, and this is the real thing. I don't think it's in 70 millimeter though, so maybe that's something for us to aspire to. Robert and I are going, and then my oldest and her boyfriend are going with us. I don't think either of them has read the book. Robert has, and I've read the book and I've listened to the book. So I've had both of those experiences and am super hyped. Cannot wait. And I imagine it will not be the first, it will not be the only time I see the movie. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah.
But
and the early reviews of the movie are phenomenal.
Crazy
right now,
positive.
So. Yeah. Yeah.
And we talked about this perhaps even on one of these recordings, Ed, that there's part of me that like I want to guard my heart and not go into it with all of the love and excitement and hype that I feel, but I can't. I don't want to I don't want to what does Brene say? Dress rehearse tragedy, and just imagine it will not be as good. I have, and we'll talk some about this at the end of our conversation today of what our expectations or what we hope to see and don't see. But I just have such trust in Lord and Miller, the directing duo who are putting this together, and Drew Goddard, who wrote the screenplay for The Martian, as well as this. Andy Weir, of course, the author of the book. So it's a good team. And so I think we have good reason to have good hope for this.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. So fingers crossed.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
So if we will say this again at the end, but 2 weeks, and you mentioned this, 2 weeks from today on the 30th of March, also at 3 p.m. Eastern, we will be taking up the movie, and we will each have seen it probably twice, maybe more. Who knows? I don't know. Could be so great. We cannot avoid just going back again and again.
Yeah.
So
I'd suggested for us about getting started. One of the podcasts that MaryAnn got me hooked on is this one rather irreverent, darn funny, very good podcast called The House of R from the Ringer Podcast Network. They did their space draft of space movies because they're also exceedingly hyped about this. And so I had an idea of just like throwing out because they had these categories of space horror, space connection, space saviors, first contact, visual splendor, and wild card. And so I thought maybe starting that off for today with that like space books, and not spending a whole ton of time on these, but just kind of going through them real quick. And MaryAnn, you had mentioned that you didn't quite have the space book library quite the same way probably that I do. Um, but do you want to kind of go down what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, kind of starting big with the kind of genre itself, and then narrowing down into the book in particular that we're looking at today. Of course, Project Hail Mary. Um, I first have to just shout out Andy Weir's other works. Of course, we know The Martian, which is another one of those that I think works equally well on paper, in audiobook, and the movie. They all bring something different to the experience, and I have revisited all three of those formats for that story multiple times. Uh, the uh, the audiobook, oh gosh, I cannot remember his name. I usually have it right there, but he does a masterful job. It's not the same narrator as Project Hail Mary, but just does a great job with the wisecracking Mark Watney, and also the vulnerable side of being the only person on an entire planet by yourself. Love both Project Hail Mary, of course. We'll talk about The Martian, but also Artemis. Have you read that book by him?
I I did. It's a
Yeah,
distant third for me.
it is as
Um,
well. It is for me as well. I don't think the character is not fleshed out as well. I will say what I was so compelled by. The story itself was just okay. She's kind of a Han Solo type space smuggler, basically on in a lunar colony. Um, and uh, I loved the fascination of learning and experiencing what it might be like to live on the moon.
yeah.
And so that's what I loved about that book. The plot was just okay.
Hmm.
But the peril that she's in, that everyone's in, living in a place that really is not designed for us to live on, I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's shout out Andy Weir's other stuff. And all three share in common just a kind of a fundamentally positive view of humanity and a sense of collaboration and community and basic kind of kindness. And we'll, I'm sure, get into that. But that's one of the things that keeps me coming back to his
Hmm.
work. Um, the other one that I wanted to shout out that I have read in the last couple of years was by Emily St. John Mandel, who wrote Station 11, which we have talked about in this series on Pop Culture Pastors Hour. But her most recent, I believe it's still her most recent, Sea of Tranquility, um, it was really enjoyable. It had some really beautiful passages. It's funny because I read it and I had the experience as I was reading it. I love this story. I love the way she's writing it. It's about a writer, it's about a pandemic too, so you've got a little of everything, and you've got kind of lunar colony in that story as well. But then when I went last night to sort of generate my list, I could not remember the plot at all. But
Same
there's
here,
some
actually.
time travel in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a very enjoyable experience. I highly recommend that one.
Yeah.
Um, so I have a couple more, but they come from my husband, and I'll share those in a minute. So let me kick it over to you and see if you have some personal recs that you want to offer in terms of space novels.
Yeah. So I kind of went down the draft categories. So for space horror, and it's kind of actually a weird one for horror, but I adore the book. I'm not as much a fan of the author anymore as I've learned more about him. But the book Ender's Game,
Oh
by
yeah,
Orson Scott Card.
of
Um,
course.
I
I did
put
read
that
that
in
one.
horror because of what they do to manipulate these children that you don't
Good call.
realize
Good
until the
call.
end of the book.
Yeah.
That is horror. That is
Yes.
absolute horror. The book is amazing. The book is absolutely amazing. So I had that for space horror. The movie was meh.
Yeah.
Um, Space Connections. I I didn't quite understand what they meant totally by space connections. So I'm going with one that has built up a ton of connections in my life, which is the Star Wars Thrawn trilogy that came
Mm,
out in the mid '90s, that sort of reinvigorated the fan base and is still probably the best of any of the Star Wars novelizations. And it is kind of sacred text, so to speak, in our house.
nice.
Um, and in fact, I actually was able to get my daughter got me an autographed copy of Heir to the Empire, um, from Timothy Zahn. So just absolutely adore that one. Space Saviors, which is about like people saving the day type of thing. Was nonfiction. It's Lost Moon, the Jim Lovell book that
Oh,
Apollo
good
13
call.
was based on.
Good call.
Um, First Contact. I can say this because I have read the book. It is definitely Project Hail Mary,
Yeah.
just of that first contact with a non-human extraterrestrial life form. Visual Splendor is one that I just read this past year called Orbital. And I'm blanking on the author right now. There's not a lot of plot to it, but
Mm.
it is beautifully poetic of these different astronauts on the ISS on a 24-hour orbit, series of orbits around the Earth.
Wow.
It is so poetically beautiful. It
So
is
that's
just
a
tremendous.
fiction.
Yep,
It's a fiction book.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
Got it. Orbital.
Wonderful. And
Nice.
then Wild Card, gotta go with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't
Of course.
sorry, I almost made you spew there, didn't
No,
I?
no, 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 you
Oh, it
didn't. I
almost
was
looked
just
like
like,
it.
it looked like a big duh moment. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't have my towel with me right now, but I just
Yeah.
adore that book. So
That's
anyway,
great.
those are
That's
mine.
great. Good.
So
Well, let me add a couple that kind of add to those categories. I actually think the movie version of this next recommendation is better than the book, and part of it's because it's a short story. But the piece that is the movie Arrival is based on, which is called Story of Your Life, I would put that in the category of Space Connections because it really is about uh, Louise Banks, this linguist, and her connection to the heptapods. But it could also be a first contact. It could fit into
mhm,
that category as well. It's a
mhm.
short story, so they really had to flesh it out quite a lot to make a whole movie around it. But I think they do it in such a beautifully faithful way
Yeah, they
that
do.
I would highly recommend that. I will smuggle in Dune, which also came up in the space draft that you're referencing from that podcast from the House of R. I have not read Dune, but as I was talking to Robert this morning, he's like, "Well, you got to mention Dune," and uh, that would go in, I think, Space Savior. Um, so you have Paul Atreides in that. I loved the movie so much that I feel like it's okay to smuggle in the book, and I will read it one of these days. Have you read the Hyperion? Uh, I
No.
don't know if it's. I think it's a series. Robert also name checked that one. So folks who liked who want to just read a little more space fiction, there are some ideas there. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, should we
Anything
jump
else
into
on those?
Hail?
Yeah.
So let's jump into Hail Mary. I
Let's
think
do
kind
it.
of at
Let's
this
do it.
point. So
Yeah.
so
So, what were your first kind of thoughts about the book itself? Just did you like it, not like it? Comparisons to The Martian, any of that? Kind of general
so.
thoughts.
By the way, first of all, warning: spoilers galore. If you have
Yep.
not read the book, I mean, there's not like a big twist ending. Well, maybe a little bit of a twist ending, but not. But yeah, spoilers galore both today and then when we talk about the movie. So just
Be warned.
that's out there.
Yep.
Um, so I adored The Martian. Like we talked about, I was kind of meh with Artemis. Project Hail Mary, I loved from like the first pages. Um,
Yep.
just the way that it started in this, like, wait, what is going on here? Um, and the way it just interwove his coming out of this hypersleep thing and learning what he's got to do ahead of him.
Mhm.
Um, and the humanity of it. I loved the beginnings and the learnings with Rocky. Um,
Mm.
and I adore the ending.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
I If they change, that's the one thing. If they change the ending in the movie, I'm gonna have problems.
Yeah. So
So
for those, I imagine most of you who have joined us at this point and who will listen later have at least seen a trailer. So Rocky. I mean, Ryland Grace is the human that goes into space, and that's whose story we're following. But Rocky is this Iridian, right? Is that the
yep, yep.
what they decided to call him? This character that's will be rendered in the movie as a kind of a puppet that's kind of a rock. I mean, that's why they call him Rocky. He doesn't. There he is. Yeah, just a lot of a lot of limbs, no face to speak of, communicates in this really interesting way. And so I'll share my experience of. Did you read the book first, or have you listened to the audiobook?
I
Or
haven't listened to the audiobook,
okay,
but yeah, I've read the book, I think 3 times
yeah.
probably. Yeah.
So I most recently read it, but the first time I experienced the book was as an audiobook, and the way they do Rocky's voice is so charming. Ray Porter, as I said, is the narrator. He does an incredible job. And um, what we know about Rocky, and we'll learn, you see it a little bit in the previews, and I'm sure that'll come out in the film, is um, he has no visual, he has no sightedness. So everything is kind of almost like a sonar. The sense of hearing is very acute in his race, and he communicates with this kind of musical kind of chords that convey what he's trying to say. And the way they render that in audiobook form is just delightful, so wonderful. And the characterization of that character, I mean, and one of the things I've heard people say is this is going to be a real bummer if it's like Rocky is like the wisecracking sidekick, because they really are true equals in this story. It is a friendship story. It's not a buddy story. He's not a sidekick. He is a fully fleshed out character. Not he has no flesh, but he's fully realized in his own right.
Yeah.
And so the story of how they are both, in a nutshell, the two of them have been sent from their respective planets to try to save their planets because their suns are dying in both of these solar systems. And so they end up having to work together. Um, just absolutely wonderful. But as you say, there is this interesting structure where you're kind of going from what's going on the ship to a flashback, and it goes back and forth. Here's how Ryland Grace got to be where he is, and it really unfolds gradually over time, which strikes me as a very complicated way to write a book. What do you reveal and when? I don't know if you felt like I was so interested in what was going on the ship. I needed to know what had happened before that, but that's really where the heart of it is what he's up to out in space. And so you can't spend too long on Earth because that's going to kind of, I wondered how the structure of the book kind of struck you
Mhm.
as you were reading it.
So I love that kind of structure. I love well, yes, I was definitely like, okay, I want to get back to what's going on the ship, but I love the gradual reveal.
Hmm.
Whether it's in a film, whether it's in a book. Um, and so I adore that mystery that happens with that of like, okay, what is this all about? Why is he
Hmm.
not able to uh talk yet? Why um but even also some of the mysteries that don't really get resolved, like what
Right.
happened to his crewmates?
Hmm.
Why did they not? It just sort of is like this is it feels very natural that
Hmm.
the way that they do it to just kind of give you this sense of like you're in a sense you're Ryland, that
Hmm.
you are coming out of this sleep and you are having to sort out all of this. So
Yeah.
I adore that kind of storytelling. So it was
Yeah.
right up my alley.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, and we've had a question come in the chat of the reviews that we've read. I don't know if you've read any reviews. I definitely have. Does it follow the book? And I do think it follows that structure where it's not like you've got 45 minutes of Earth and then you get to that would be disastrous for the movie. And I think it would
Mhm.
have been hard in the book too. Probably Tolkien would have done it that way, where you like at the Two Towers, you've got the Frodo stuff, and then you've got the Aragorn stuff, and he doesn't try to weave them together at all.
Mhm.
There is a sophistication of trying to figure out what you reveal and when, as you said. But yeah, so I don't think you need to have read the book in order to see the movie, and I expect the movie will toggle back and forth in the same way because I do know. A spoiler for the movie. I do believe it opens the same way that the book does, which is this character is coming to out of hypersleep and has no idea who he is, no idea where he is, no idea what he's supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
What an incredible, I think that may have been the premise that he first started with, Andy Weir.
Mhm. Mhm.
That intrigued him was like, what if we started with an amnesia plot, but let's kick up the the tension and make it someone in space.
Well, and the amnesia plot, but also I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, but also the gravity of it. It's not
Hmm.
just, he'd taken a fall and gotten a concussion. It's like
Right.
he's out there and he's gonna be finding out pretty soon that the fate of humanity is on
Yes,
his shoulders.
is on his shoulders. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. When you read the book, had they already cast the movie, and did you
Mm,
know what was? So I'm curious if you had someone in mind that you pictured as Ryland Grace as you read it,
I
because I
yeah.
definitely did.
Okay, okay. I actually didn't. I
Yeah.
I I don't know that when I read something, I don't know that I necessarily think of this this performer would be great in this role. Like, I don't know
Hmm.
that I visualized what Ryland looked like.
Yeah.
Um, and and I honestly didn't really even know visually what I even thought Rocky looked like.
Hmm.
Um, and and so yeah, like that's just one of the weird things for me is being as visual as I am. When I'm reading, I just tend to not do that.
Yeah.
So
That is
who did you
interesting
have?
because
Yeah,
you're a photographer, so you
yeah,
definitely have that kind of visual sense of things. I
yeah.
don't typically either. I don't typically picture a specific person except from the first pages. I mean, like you said, it grabs you so quickly. I was like, they are gonna make a movie out of this. And so then I just began to think, who would I cast? And throughout, I pictured Mark Ruffalo
Mm,
as
I can
Ryland
see that.
Grace, and I still think he would have been a good. He's good because Ryland is a middle school teacher, kind of schlubby, and he doesn't have a lot of friends, but the kids love him. So you have to have some humor and some pathos. And I just imagine him with the kind of ruffled hair. And of course, I have no complaints with Ryan Gosling. I'm sure he's going to do an amazing job. He's such a good actor. He rarely misses. But it is a little bit. Are we really supposed to believe that this guy is just a loner and doesn't really? I mean, he's so ridiculously good looking. Like, can you just put glasses on him and then you're like, oh, yeah, he's kind of homely? No,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
Ryan Gosling wearing glasses. But I'm all in. I think it's going to be a wonderful portrayal of a
yeah.
really iconic character.
Yeah, when we read it, um, our family read it, not like all together, like reading it aloud type of thing, but um, I think we got the Kindle version and like everybody just downloaded it to their devices and we're all reading it at the same time. I mean, we read it when it first came out because we
Yeah.
loved The Martian so much, and I don't remember if we knew that it had already been optioned for a film.
Okay.
So it wasn't I think my first reaction, though, I do remember when they said the movie was coming out and they cast Ryan Gosling, I I honestly my reaction was like, "Really?" Like,
Mm.
I mean, it was, um, just because yeah, same kinda thing, like, it didn't feel that, but I think, it's Hollywood, they needed to have
Yeah.
the big name, and
Yep. Yep.
he'll do great,
And
he'll do great.
someone who will
Yeah.
carry the movie.
Yeah.
It's not gonna. I don't expect. We're getting a little bit into prediction territory, which we'll hit at the end. But like, I don't expect. The Martian. What makes those flashes from Mars to the ship of Watney's crewmates that realize over the course of the movie that they left him behind. They didn't realize that at the time. And then you've got the stuff in Mission Control and Johnson Space Center and also the Jet Propulsion Lab. Stacked cast. I mean, Jeff Daniels and Benedict Wong and Donald Glover and I mean and Jessica Chastain and Michael Pena and all the Sebastian Stan and I mean, I think the cast will probably be solid, but you just don't have the just cast of dozens. It's a
Mhm.
much smaller story, and especially given that the weight of the world literally is on this guy's shoulders who is quite scientifically sophisticated. He has a PhD in microbiology. They talk about that, but he's also a teacher. And so there's just a different character to it that will, I think,
Yeah.
be really different. So,
Yeah. So MaryAnn, what was it about the book that, as you read it or listened to it the first time, what was it that just made you go, "This book is really something"? I mean, we talked a little
yeah.
bit about the structure, but,
Hmm.
like, thematically,
Yeah.
message, whatever, what was it that really
Right.
grabbed you?
It's the same thing I loved about Arrival and also The Martian, which is look at what we can do when we work together. And I've written, those who follow my work know that I've written a lot about hope punk, which is this genre of science fiction and fantasy, which is ordinary people doing their best to kind of make things better, even if it may not succeed. And that really was, I think, a theme of we're just going to keep, and we see it in Rogue One as well. In fact, we've talked about this exact line that Jyn Erso says, where we just take the next step and the next step until all of the chances are spent. And so there's a bit of a race against time. There's a everything has to go right, but then a lot of things go wrong. And how do you? It's a great improv book, a good improv story because they constantly have to, shift and do things differently. Andy Weir just has such an open-hearted, kind of view. I expect he's that way in person, but he just writes characters that um, aren't cynical, that really want to do the right thing. And that's so refreshing. You and I have talked about this so many times. There's so much dystopian stuff out there, and there's something entertaining about that. But this is, um, it's not utopian because they're really trying to save the world. And there's some bad stuff that happens along the way as they try to do that. But people will roll up their sleeves and do what it takes. And
Mhm,
I'm a sucker for those kinds of stories. So,
mhm,
how
mhm,
about you?
mhm. I I love, and this is similar to The Martian, and I don't remember Artemis enough to remember whether this was definitely the case, but, the lifting up of what science can do.
Mhm.
Um, while, yes, I am a very, quote, religious person, science is central for me. Before I went to seminary, I was probably leaning towards moving into doing in like computer science or
Mhm.
engineering type of stuff. So I've always been a science head.
Mhm.
And so in a culture right now where science is being denigrated and ignored, um, anything that keeps reminding us of the importance and even the beauty of science. Um, and Arrival did the same thing with
Mhm.
linguistics, especially,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and Contact similarly. Like, have these,
Another
you
good
know,
book. I loved
yes,
that book as well.
without
Yeah,
a
Carl
doubt, yeah.
Sagan.
Um, that science makes a difference, and
Yeah.
knowing science and doing science is vital
Mhm.
for our survival as human beings. And I love the idea, and I mentioned about the beauty of science. There's a good friend of mine, where we first lived after my wife and I got married in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, he was a theoretical mathematician.
Mm.
And one of the things Jason did in our church was he would often teach classes about the beauty of mathematics.
Love it.
And it was so fun to just sit in on this and just to see, that math isn't just this boring, like your your times tables and all this
Yeah.
stuff, but there's just such a beauty and an elegance to it.
Yeah.
And what Ryland does in the book, in the flashbacks in his classroom, um, and then how the science is practiced both by him and by Rocky.
Mhm.
And again, the book, for the or sorry, the Martian does the same thing
Yeah.
of, and my family and I just rewatched The Martian last night, and just that, I mean, even in the movie, they don't, I mean, they dumb some of it down, simplify it down, but the science is still very much at the forefront.
Yes. Yes.
So I that's one of the things I love about Andy Weir's stuff is he
Mhm.
doesn't, it's not just like this, oh yeah, he figured out the math. Like, it's like, here's the math. Here it
Mhm.
is. This is what,
Mhm.
so that was
It's so
one piece.
beautiful. I
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more on all of that. Although I have never been tempted into any kind of STEM field, I went to Rice University, which is for a long time was primarily a science and engineering school. I mean, they have a very robust humanities and social science program now. But yeah, I can remember sitting during a study session where Robert and our friend Jay were working on some kind of problem sets for a math class and something clicked. And one of them said, "You even use the word elegant." I mean, that is so elegant. And there was this kind of eureka that I get when I read a piece of literature and see a connection that I hadn't before, or when I dive into the Greek of the New Testament and find a connection with a word. And that's such a beautiful thing to see on screen. And you're right. At a time when science needs a champion, Andy Weir is right there for us. And
Mhm.
and as I was rereading this time, I was really struck in a new way with just how there are several different times where either Ryland Grace or somebody he's working with on Earth, or maybe even Rocky to some extent, um, they really have to solve a problem or they're gonna die. I mean, it's kind of a life or death thing, but it's almost like the scientists can't help themselves from being like, "Wow, this is cool." Like the science, so the threat to the sun is this kind of small sort of little creature called astrophage, and it's kind of a microbial thing that is dimming the sun. And astrophage, sorry, astrophage, I may have not have said that right. Anyway, they they're so fascinated by it. And it also has a lot of promise. Like if they can figure out how it doesn't kill the sun, it could like solve the energy crisis. And that's a whole another thing. But like there's several times when people are like, you know, wow. It just in the midst of this really serious work they have to do, they're like, this stuff's amazing. And just the joy of doing science really comes through.
Mhm.
So
So we have a absolutely dead on quote that goes along with a couple of or comment that goes along with a couple of other podcasts we've done of the novel's focus on survival and human resilience in the face of adversity, emphasizing scientific reasoning, and human ingenuity over religious themes. As pastors, does this preach?
hmm,
I think it absolutely does because
yeah.
I think that personally, God has given us brains
Mhm,
to understand this world, and so I think for us to ignore the realities of science is ignoring part of how we've been created,
mhm,
and what is just part of the nature of being human. Because human beings have been doing science for as long as human beings have been around. Um,
mhm.
may
Yeah.
we may look at some of it now and go back and go, the humors in the body, but it was still, that was their best ideas at that point.
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I think the whole thing of taking the whole of who we are as human beings, that's, I believe, what God desires of us.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and I completely agree, and some of the people that I know who are the most in touch with a sense of awe and wonder are our scientists, and I think they have something to teach some of us religious folk who, I mean, myself included, who I can sometimes be a very, like, our faith calls us to act. I mean, I think you and I are both a part of a very practiced sort of faith, like, we are called to help one another, to serve, and you can do that without any sense of God whatsoever.
mhm,
But what uh, you know, Ryland Grace, other scientists in the book, and just beyond help us call to is isn't this created world, or they may not say created, but isn't everything that we see just kind of amazing? Um, And so yeah, I think it's a definitely a both and. It is
Mhm.
something that you can read completely apart from any kind of deeper theological. Why are we here? Who created it all? But for me, scientifically oriented stories like this do not threaten my sense of faith. They just enhance it.
Mhm.
We're created in the image of God, and God is a creative God. And so our curiosity and our desire to know more about the world and hopefully do good things with it, with that knowledge, are really important. And I bring all those things together. So,
Yeah, and one of my seminary professors who actually just passed away a couple of days ago,
hmm.
his name was Daniel Miliori.
Oh, I hadn't
He
heard that.
Yeah,
Faith
yeah.
Seeking
Seek
Understanding. I have
understanding.
that
Yep,
book somewhere in my
yep, yep.
bookshelf.
He was my, first year systematic theology professor, and the book I mean, and the book kind of engages theology from a scientific perspective. It's this, how are we understanding? How do we get this one,
Mhm.
kind of come to a place of understanding something, but knowing that when we do that, that opens up more questions.
Yeah.
And when in the scientific method, that's the same thing. Science never has, even things that we thought were locked in, that
Mhm.
physics and things like that, we are finding is not quite as perfect as we thought it once was.
Right.
And so that's leading us into the quantum realm. That's leading us to all these other places. So there is, I think, a healthy theological practice very much follows, I think, a healthy scientific process.
Mhm.
That
Agree.
and
I
and
agree.
and also that when something doesn't work anymore, it's okay to say, you know what, maybe it never worked
Mhm.
really right before.
Mhm.
As opposed to feeling like we got to hold on to absolutely everything, and if we let go of one thing, the whole thing falls apart.
Oh, that's such a good point. And I think the the idea, I mean, the idea of science as a constant process of deeper awareness and knowledge and um, understanding of the world also, I think, connects with the idea that, I mean, to put it, the technical term in our faith tradition is eschatology, right? Which is the idea that we're headed somewhere, that this isn't all just kind of random, but that God ultimately wants wholeness and peace and justice for this world. And so we are always to be about that pursuit. Just as we never really rest on our laurels, there's always more to learn. And I think you see that in the, I mean, one of the, right near the end of the novel, when, again, spoilers, um, Rocky and Ryland have kind of solved, they know what they need to do. They've kind of found this antidote, basically, the amoeba little creature that actually eats the astrophage. And so they each kind of leave with some of that, and they can make more, and this is going to save the day. So they say goodbye, and then Ryland Grace discovers that they created this, helped this amoeba, taumoeba they call it, to evolve so that it will, anyway, it'll survive where it needs to survive. But they realize they've also bred it to escape the container that it was in. So it gets loose in their respective ships, and Ryland realize, so there's this kind of profound whoops, and science is full of those too, of like unintended consequences. We thought we were going in this direction and it worked, but then there were all these other things that happened. And that leads to this, a kind of make or break question for him, is like, do I continue back to Earth and get to see, the world that I used to live on, or do I go save Rocky, who also has suffered the same fate, where the you know the stuff has gotten everywhere, and
Mhm,
so anyway, the idea of, and then he has to solve that issue, right? So it just never ends. There's just
mhm.
always a new thing to unlock, a new challenge to engage.
Yeah, yeah. I also, something that, we both in our notes, we both also talked about with this is, and MaryAnn, you put it much better than I did, of a more nuanced take on, quote, "an advanced alien race."
Ah, right.
And I think that and I think that's also one of the things that I loved about Arrival and
Mhm.
Contact. Maybe this become like my holy trinity of sci-fi films. I don't know,
Yeah.
but is that these other alien races, these extraterrestrials, are not here or not engaging to come and just destroy us, to eat us as food, to just wantonly destroy our planet.
Yeah, or
Um,
colonize us in some way, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like so many, Independence Day, V, War of the Worlds, you name it. But these are creatures who, in many cases, are a heck of a lot smarter than we are. Um, but the thing that I loved about this one and about aliens, that's a very different alien race. Um,
Yes.
yeah, is and Arrival is that there's just this deep sense, this sense that these creatures, these beings, are so different from us.
Mhm. Mhm.
They're not two-legged, 2 feet with a head in the same
Yeah,
way that we are.
right.
And that's one thing I listen to Star Talk, Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast, quite a bit. And it's one of the things whenever discussion of life beyond Earth comes up is we have no idea how life may have evolved in other places. It's
Mhm.
gonna look so different and
Right.
act so different and communicate so different than anything we have
Yeah,
experienced or theorized about.
so
So,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, and 2 things about that. One, the creatures in Arrival, the heptapods and Rocky, is a little bit different circumstances, but they both need humans' help. So it's not, again, not a kind of dominating thing. I mean, the heptapods get in touch with us because they're like, "We're gonna need your help." They view time differently. So they kind of know they're gonna need humans' help down the road, and so they're giving us some technology now, which is such an amazing, that these very advanced creatures still also have vulnerabilities and that they might need our help. And the same with Rocky. So um, there are two major things that you've come to find out in the plot of Project Hail Mary that Rocky and the Iridians do not know. One is they don't know what radiation is. And that's how actually Rocky comes to be the only survivor of this big ship. They had a whole fleet of people that were, or creatures, yeah, Iridians that were going to go and investigate a solution, but they all die because they didn't make their ship to be impervious to radiation. And so Ryland Grace is like, oh man, like we knew that and they don't. And why would they know it? Because they didn't need to know it based on how their planet is kind of composed. So there's that. And then also just um, general relativity and special relativity, like the whole idea of space and time. And I'm not going to try to explain it, but that also is something. So you have this human, Ryland Grace, who's a teacher, gets to teach Einstein to this other creature, and I just really loved that it wasn't like the aliens know everything in a much higher way than we do. And it kind of reminded me, if this isn't too much of a stretch thematically, that um, this is true culturally. Like we assume sometimes because we are Western kind of Enlightenment era, people that we just have all of the knowledge that and more primitive, quote unquote. I put that in big, huge, despairing air quotes, right? That they don't know what we know, but
Mhm.
we know what we need to know to survive in the world that we live in. And that
Yeah.
is the same for any kind of culture, any kind of race, any kind of alien creature. So I just really loved that it had that kind of nuance to it.
Yeah. And but it went both ways. That
Right.
Rocky, as Ryland is sharing about general and special relativity and Einstein, that Rocky isn't like, okay, that's just a load of crap. Like, because I
Right.
mean, in one sense, when you first think about those
Yeah.
theories, you kind of go, wait, time is fluid?
Hmm.
No, time is fit. No, it's not.
Yes.
And that he that Rocky is like, okay, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
and that Ryland is the same way with the insights that Rocky shares. That
Mhm.
there's just this, and I think that's one of the things that, and again, this I gotta give props to Neil deGrasse Tyson in the way that he shares this a lot, is that, and you see this in a lot of films and stories too, that scientists are often the ones who are able to work over cross-cultural barriers much better than religious types.
What a
Um,
great, yeah, that's the we'll take that note as a critique. I think that's very true.
mhm, mhm,
And how refreshing, that's also refreshing thinking about the kind of scientific aspect of just they present evidence and or the ideas and they're accepted. There's not this kind
mhm,
of conspiratorial that's made up or, that's just a very refreshing in our kind
yeah,
of conspiracy minded world that's so kind of can be hostile sometimes to just
mhm,
flat out evidence.
mhm,
That's just a refreshing thing to live in that world where, yeah, Ryland said, here's how that works. And Rocky's like, oh, got it.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, yeah.
Yeah. So, um, anything else you want to kind of check in terms of themes, and then we'll talk about some hopes or what we're expecting from the film.
I will also the heroism
Hmm.
that, if there is a twist, and I'm not gonna spoil this, but there is a twist about that I do hope they show in the film about, and I'm just gonna say it as this way, about Ryland's motivation and being on the ship.
Hmm.
And I really hope that they keep that in the film because I think that was essential to the book.
Hmm.
Um, but that there is the willingness at times of people giving themselves fully for the sake of others.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I'm actually watching a documentary right now on HBO about the Fukushima
Mm.
uh, nuclear disaster in Japan after the earthquake and tsunami. And it's mostly focusing on the scientists who basically stayed in the plant, dosed with crazy amounts of radiation that is going to completely affect their lives, the rest of their lives. But we're like, if we don't do this, this whole thing, it's going to be destroy the
Yeah.
entire northern half of Japan. And so I think that, and you see that in Ryland's decision to come
Hmm.
turn around.
Hmm.
Um, and so that is that is a powerful kind of heroism. And again, in our tradition, we have there's no greater love than one who, lays down their life for one's friends. And but that I think is a beautiful part of this story too.
Agree. Agree. And I didn't watch, did you watch the Oscars last night?
I watched snippets and just
Yeah.
was so annoyed with the horrific jokes that it was so bad.
Got
It
it.
wasn't that they
Yeah.
were crude, it was just bad jokes. So I just
Yeah,
was
I'm
like, I
just kind
can't.
of,
So
yeah.
yeah.
I didn't watch it, but I have watched some clips, and somebody sent me I'm looking at the documentary that won the full length documentary, not the documentary short. Is called Mr. Nobody Against Putin, and somebody sent me the acceptance speech from the documentary filmmaker, and he talks about how authoritarianism thrives when we participate in these just countless acts of complicity, these small kind of, obeying in advance, as Tim Snyder says, and that we all face a choice as to how we want to respond. And I think it may have been near the end of his speech, maybe even the last line. He says, "But even a nobody is more powerful than you think." And uh, I can't wait to watch that documentary. I was just reading the plot of Mr. Nobody Against Putin. But this is what we have. This is what this story is really about. So yes, it's about science and it's about the triumph of kind of people working together. But ultimately, Ryland makes a fateful decision at the end of the movie because he has found, I mean, he's behaving heroically on behalf of someone. It's not a principle, it's not a moral stand. It's like, I care about this being, and that's what's going to allow me to make the heroic play. And I think that's how all heroism works.
Mhm.
It's really, I mean, we've quoted The Last Jedi so many times, but you know, this is how we win, not fighting what we hate, but saving what we love. And
Mhm.
and Ryland Grace does that in the end.
Mhm.
And it's just a beautiful, yeah, I can't wait to see how they do it.
Well,
So
and if to and this definitely moves into spoiler with this part, is
yeah,
Ryland, at least in the book, Ryland has already sent the information to Earth that
right.
theoretically will save the Earth. And he knows that Rocky hasn't done that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he
Yeah, that's a
doesn't
great
turn
point.
back, Rocky and his entire civilization is gonna die.
Yeah,
Eh, but also if he turns back, he's never getting back to Earth.
that's right. That's
So,
right.
like that, there is that deep sacrifice of,
Mm-hmm.
I am gonna give up my future for, and it just brought in a quote for me of like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember. It's something of like, courage is sacrificing yourself for people you may never know, or something.
Mm, mm, mm.
Trying to
Yeah,
remember. I
yeah.
feels like it was a Brian Stevenson quote, but,
Mm.
yeah.
I
So,
love that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, um, confession time, I have never watched Interstellar. I have not watched that movie. I know. I'm halfway through now, because I felt like it's a little bit of a kindred cousin, perhaps, or at least
Mhm.
I've been told, to Project Hail Mary. And same with those folks. I mean, it was a one-way trip. And the characters, I mean, the Ryland's crewmates who end up dead, and we never do figure out what happened to them. There's no sabotage, any suggestion. It may have just been something wasn't calibrated right, or something happened. But anyway, um, they weren't going to return. They each had to, in fact, make a decision about how they wanted to end their life when they've done what they set out to do. And the ship's starting to fail or whatever. It's like they each have their own little method, um, which is very grisly, but it also drives home the point. Like, what an amazing. That's also why I love the book, right? Because it's
Mhm.
about people who would be willing to do that, and we know, I mean, that from the Fukushima example, there are people who will do
Yep,
that.
yep,
That's
yep,
you know. So,
yeah.
anything else you mentioned? The kind of hoping that they really make that choice that Ryland Grace has to make really clear of what exactly he's giving up. But is there anything else that you're kind of looking forward to, worried about? I know you haven't watched hardly any of the like little sneak peeks and
No,
stuff. Yeah.
nope, nope. Um, I I want this to be like a film that really just goes, I think it's like 2.5 hours, I think,
Hmm.
is the runtime, that is like that.
Yeah.
That when it's done, it's like, "Wait, that was that was the whole like, did it
Hmm.
just I'm lost in it."
Yeah.
Um, and I know there's gonna be sacrifices that are gonna be made for getting it on this film, on the
Mhm.
screen. That's always gonna be the case. Um, but I really I hope that some of the themes that we've talked about are really at the forefront, and it's not just like a simple action movie. And
Mhm.
the reviews that I've seen, including one that was a negative review from Variety,
Mm.
um, basically was saying that it's because like there's been some reviews of like, this is the movie we need right now,
Mhm.
like kind of theme. And Variety was kind of like, yeah, I don't want another movie that we need right now. Like it was just sort of like, I don't want that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, give me a break.
That's one
Um,
of those reviews that is more about the reviewer than it does about the
totally,
work that they're
totally.
reviewing. Yeah.
So I guess I want this to be just this reminder of what we can be as humans, what we can be as beings, maybe just um, that really just shows the something positive and optimistic and beautiful. And I hope
Mhm.
it's just great eye candy too. So
Yes. I don't
yeah.
see how it can't be. I have heard, and I think you may have even sent me the link to the article that said, I mean, there is nary a green screen in this whole. I mean, they do use visual effects, and but there's a lot of practical effects, and the people who've talked about that said you just really feel like this is. I mean, they did build the ship. Like, I mean, it is real, and
Mhm.
Rocky is not CGI. Rocky is a puppet, and so you get all that personality that comes from rendering him that way. His voice sounds fun and delightful. I can't wait to kind of see it fully fleshed out. But I think you said it so well. You know, they're going to take some things out. They're going to have to, and that's going to be a bummer. There's a lot of little hiccups along the way. I remembered this with The Martian too because I reread it recently as well. That's like, oh wow, they left that whole kind of point out, and that was one of my favorite little problem-solving things that Watney has, and there are some of those that will probably end up on the cutting room floor in this, movie as well, but it's gotta be about what you just said. Um, I think I've probably quoted Starman here before, which is a there's a I don't think it's based on a book, so maybe we could talk about it in 2 weeks when we talk about movies, but, there's a first contact and a space connection, story, that wonderful Jeff Bridges movie from the
Mhm.
'80s, I think, but he says, "You all are," I think he says, "strange, perhaps beautiful species because you're at your best when things are at their worst." And I have that has made an impression on me from the time I saw that movie as a young person. I really think that is true a lot of the time, and so let's see it. Cannot
Mhm.
wait to see
Yeah.
how that all comes out.
Yep. Yep.
And when it does, we will be here 2 weeks from today, so that gives you all a time to hopefully see the movie if you're inclined to do so. So, Monday, March 30th at 3 PM Eastern Daylight Time, we will be back here on Substack Live to talk about it. And I also wanted to give a little preview to something will be after that. I don't know if you wanna talk about this or, what we've got cooking, with a couple of special guests.
Well, why don't you do that? And then I've got another quick little
Perfect.
preview thing.
Okay,
So
so I have been making my way through The Pit. And have you been watching it, or is this an assignment? Okay, so you've also watched it.
we're caught up to all the ones that have been
Okay,
released so far.
I still have not watched season 2, so I'm just finished season 1, but I'm watching it with 2 of my kids, and that ER is just groaning for a chaplain. And
Oh,
so,
much.
what we're going to do after we finish our Project Hail Mary series, sometime in early April, is we're going to bring on 2 people who are current or former chaplains, hospital chaplains. And did you do part of that as your part of your ministry training to do a
Yeah.
CPE? Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
clinical pastoral education. That is the extent of my chaplain experience. Is that unit of training? But we'll have some bona fide experts with us, and we're going to just kind of workshop what would it be like to be chaplains in that ED, in that emergency department on the pit. What do chaplains do? How is that work helpful? And where are maybe some plot points in that show that we would especially be interested in providing supports for. So pastors, chaplains are going to riff on that a little bit. So
Yeah.
get caught up on the pit. Um, so what do you got?
Yeah. Mine is, and I know because she hasn't mentioned it yet, over MaryAnn's left shoulder is her new book coming out in early April, Better Than Normal.
Oh, I love
Which
this.
yes, which I had the honor of reading a preview copy. It's phenomenal.
Thanks.
Um it is kind of, to use a little bit of the Project Hail Mary quote, or the reviews of, it's a book that is for our time.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I think it
I thought you were going to
is,
quote Rocky. Amaze, amaze, amaze.
I could. I definitely could. I definitely could. Um, But so anyway, it is available for pre-order on all varieties of online and local stores, but encourage either order at your local store or something like bookshop.com, .org, .org.com, .org. Anyway, bookshop.
Yeah.
I think it's .org actually.
I think so too.
But available pre-order, pick it up. It's really
good. That's right. And we're going to take some of the themes of the book, because it talks about different values that can kind of transform our world, and we're going to look at some of those through the lens of pop culture and have a little bit of a series there, and maybe some guests along the way. So awesome. Cool. Good. Right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Happy Project Hail Mary week to those who celebrate. And we'll see you back here in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. See you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.